Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description, to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say, I'm watching so-and-so show. And then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it. And that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 8 of Apple TV's Silo, entitled Hanna. This episode's named after Juliet's mother, Hanna. Once Juliet finds Sim's folder on her mother, Juliet learns some pretty important truths about not just Hanna, but also about her father, Jorah. So let me apologize up front for the late release. Two reasons here. One, I kind of had a lot going on for Father's Day weekend. Father's Day is the most important day of the year for me. I take it seriously. It's one of the only days, it's the only day where I can be celebrated for something that I actually do. Like, I don't have control over my birthday or Christmas, but like Father's Day is a time to get celebrated for an achievement. So I take it pretty seriously, and I spent this weekend kind of preparing for a lot of things that I had planned for Father's Day, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to treat myself this time. I don't say treat myself because it's not like doing my videos is a chore, but I'm like, I'm going to push it back to Monday, and I'll just get this one out just a little bit late, and I'm just going to, like, you know, focus on everything I need to do for Father's Day for the weekend. So that's the reason I got getting this one out a little late, but I promise you guys, episodes 9 and 10, the final two, those will be out right on time on the following 2 Fridays. So let's get into talking about this episode. And, you know, I had a couple of days, not even a couple, like I watched this Thursday night, so I had all of Friday, all of Saturday, and all of Sunday to kind of just sit with this episode. And I had a feeling, I had this particular feeling, how I feel about the episode. I had it when I watched it, but over these 3 days since, you know, I wanted to see if that feeling would stay with me, and it has. I feel the same way, even stronger than I did after watching it initially on Thursday night. And while I still think, well, I don't want to say still think, while I believe this to be just your typical really solid and strong episode of Silo that just showcases how well this show is written, I think it relied too heavily on the Bernard reveal, and the problem with the Bernard reveal was that it was 0% surprising. So very early in the episode, Juliet tries to view the contents of the hard drive, and we all know the contents of the drive are likely going to contain like either the biggest secret surrounding the silo, or maybe like several just under the biggest secret of the silo. Either way, we know the contents of the drive are going to be really pivotal to whatever's going on in the silo and in this season. So her attempt to access the drive got me excited, because I'm like, oh shit, we're moving right to finding out what's on the drive at the beginning of episode 8. Like, what is that going to leave for 9 and 10 if we're going to learn about the drive this early? So, of course, you know, that got me excited, only for her to have access denied, and we don't find out about what's on the drive. But we then spend the whole episode, and I don't want to make this sound like it was a waste of time, because it's not. I enjoyed it. But the episode's purpose was to get Juliet to the position at the end of the episode that she's in for the Bernard reveal. Like, all the things with, like, trying to avoid getting caught by Sims with the hard drive and arresting him, and the whole thing of like, hey, I believe Sims, all of that was meant to get us to a place for the Bernard reveal. And like I said, don't get me wrong, all that stuff was good. And I'm going to talk about it. It's just a lot of time and effort dedicated to what, for me, was a very underwhelming reveal. And what did I say to you guys? It was probably episode 3 or 4, so video 3 or 4, somewhere in there, maybe even as late as 5, but I doubt it. But what did I say to you guys about Bernard and Tim Robbins' portrayal? I posted a clip if I knew which video it was, but I said the way Robbins was playing the character made it really obvious that he was a bad guy because he was leaning so hard into being the good guy. Like, he was being unjustifiably accommodating for Juliet at every moment. I'm just like, there's no way this is authentic. This is a cover-up. He's a bad guy. And I was saying I was hoping that wasn't the case and that I was wrong, because if I wasn't wrong, then that meant that Tim Robbins, who I've loved since Shawshank Redemption, was doing a really bad job of hiding the true nature of his character. And now here we are at the end of episode 8 at this reveal that's meant to be a big moment, and it's a reveal that was meant to be a big moment that I was complaining about 4 weeks ago. So, I'm complaining about them telegraphing it 4 weeks ago. Couple that with the no progress on the drive, and it just kind of left me like, man, like I enjoyed the whole ride to get here, but the end of the episode, like, it's like, okay, yeah, confirmation, but wasn't really where I wanted to end up. But like I said, again, great episode in an overall sense. And this nitpick, well, it's not a nitpick. Now, this is the first moment of me being a little bit soft on the show because I like it. It's not a nitpick. This show has now, I think, telegraphed 2 pretty big reveals. But fortunately, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. Fortunately, that kind of shit, like whether or not Bernard or Sims is a good guy or a bad guy, that's not important to me. We're going to talk, like, I'll run off a list of the things that are important to me. Who's good and who's bad ain't it. So, yes, I feel like they telegraph some of these things, and that is my first real pointing out of something negative. Like, and again, I can't even necessarily say it's a negative, like it's something the show did wrong. I figured it out, but I do this shit. Like, I watch this kind of stuff all the time. I have a keen eye for that sort of thing. But, like, that doesn't mean it was executed poorly. So, like I said, I wouldn't call it a bad thing or a negative thing. It's something that I personally didn't like. I just feel like the Tim Robbins reveal was super fucking obvious. Bernard, I'm sorry. Was super fucking obvious. And we spent this entire episode to get us to a place that I already knew we were going. So, it is what it is. So we open the episode seeing Gloria sell out Juliet. And we don't see it on camera, but she tells Sims about the hard drive. So Sims knows that Juliet has both has the hard drive and also already knows that there are cameras behind the mirrors. Interestingly enough, in this scene, we get confirmation that Gloria told Sims the truth based on him telling the nurse to give Gloria the good meds. He basically said, like, hey, if you tell me the truth, I'll give you the good meds so you can forget about all the fucked up things that have happened to you. And if you don't, then I'm going to make your life real fucking miserable. And so when he tells her, he tells the nurse, okay, give her the good stuff, that's meant to tell us that she told him the truth. And he does later confirm that he knows that Juliet has a hard drive. But the reason I mentioned this scene is I expected to find out in this episode that the meds killed her anyway. Because, I mean, she's still a liability. She still knows too much. And if you're going to give her enough meds to essentially sedate her, why not just take that? Why not just take that the rest of the way and use the meds to take the liability off the table? And maybe that could still be what happened. Maybe they just didn't, again, focused on the Bernard reveal, like not on this. Maybe that's something that'll pop up in episode 9. We'll be like, oh, Miss Hildebrand or whatever passed last night. Oh, what happened? Sims visited her. Sims visited her. Oh, okay. Well, that explains it. But I want to talk about some of these flashbacks that we see in this episode before I go back to the future. So we also get some flashbacks to Juliet and her mother trying to operate on this rabbit. And we learn a number of things through these flashbacks, so I want to hit those. I want to say real quick, but we're going to move along. I'm going to tackle like the flashback stuff kind of collectively. And the first thing I want to talk about is the rabbit itself. I think we're meant to understand here that Juliet's mother wants to learn how to operate on this rabbit's heart because her failure to be able to do that without the magnifier is what caused her to be unable to save her son and Juliet's brother. So, and we've seen that via flashbacks as well. So that's what I think we're supposed to take away here is that if she had had something like that magnifier, she might have been able to do whatever was necessary to save her son. So now she's created the magnifier, and now she's using that to kind of like practice on the rabbit, I guess, to kind of learn whatever it is that she needed to learn to help with, I guess obviously not to help with her son, but to help with any situations like that in the future. And, you know, it didn't come into play in this episode. I think it probably will later. But we learned that Juliet's mom built the magnifier herself, and that it's made up of several parts that can be broken down and hidden around the house. And that they have to be then put together to make the magnifier functional. And nothing comes of it in this episode, like I said, but I expect that strategy of important items being broken down into smaller pieces that can then be hidden in several places far apart from each other. I expect that to be a strategy that we see Juliet use. Maybe not even at the end of this season, maybe later in the show, but I expect that to be something that like a lot of what Juliet does, her main character attributes come from her mother. So we would think that if it comes up, her strategy for hiding important things, she might have got that from her mother as well. But something that is important in that scene is that the authorities smash Hanna's magnifier. And that action essentially smashed her soul. And this is what ultimately resulted in her suicide. And both her and Juliet believed that her father sold them out, which is why why they knew about the magnifier and why they smashed it. And then later in present day, I'm still staying in the flashbacks, but I got to bring this present day thing up. Juliet finds her mother's file and learns that they knew about the magnifier from the cameras behind the mirrors, and that her dad had in fact not snitched, and then they reconcile over this. And I love this scene for a number of reasons. Some authentic and some kind of tongue-in-cheek. Like, for example, when Juliet first arrives, she says she wants to know from her dad why her mom killed herself. And he says it wasn't about the magnifier. That's his first line. It wasn't about the magnifier. And then in a long roundabout way, essentially says that it was about the magnifier. Like, I could give you the whole story in like one condensed, like one sentence from each person conversation, and you can see what I'm talking about. Juliet's like, Dad, why did mom kill herself? And then Jorah is like, it wasn't about the magnifier. When Judicial came in there and smashed it, it smashed her spirit. And I'm just like, so then it was about the magnifier then, because like, why would it smash her spirit if it wasn't about the magnifier? Well, it was just a funny thing. You guys probably didn't find it funny. You might not find it funny now. You're like, this motherfucker swear he's funny, and he's not. But like, I thought it was funny because I did not foresee him going, it's not about the magnifier. It was, and then explain how it's about the magnifier over the course of a fairly lengthy explanation. But the scene works in two, I think, more authentic, non-tongue-in-cheek, real ways. One, it gives you a nice, heartwarming reconciliation moment between a father and a daughter on Father's Day weekend here in the United States, no less. But more importantly, in the world of television and film, heartwarming reconciliations often come right before devastating losses in order to make the losses a little bit more devastating. So my number 2 point, I think, here is this likely set up, I think, a death for Juliet's father, which will now be an earned emotional scene rather than them trying to make it emotional and the audience going, she ain't even really like him anyway. Now that they've reconciled, that death can mean more. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. So Back to the Future, remaining in present day, but moving back to the beginning of the episode, I really like the scene where the sheriff's office gets trashed. Like, Juliet comes in and she sees this happening, and once she finds out from Billings that this is an illegal search, they go and arrest Sims. And my favorite part is how she makes a bitch out of the guy who searched her purse when they were in the, searched her bag when they were in the sheriff's office. I like how she's like, yeah, go put that shit back and put everything back where the fuck you found it, motherfucker. Like, I liked Juliet's energy. That was very much like, that was Detroit energy. Like, she the sheriff of the silo. Like, if she was like the sheriff of Detroit, like the Detroit silo, the Detroit chapter of the silo connection here, that was very big Detroit energy. So I appreciated that out of Juliet. I also like Sims intimidating the other cops when he was locked up. Like, for the most part, I've kind of felt like Common's acting has been on the show, but I thought he was really good in that scene, kind of like taking very ordinary requests and statements and making them come off pretty intimidating. I thought it was pretty cool. But one of my favorite scenes in this episode is a simple scene, and it didn't really have any impact on the story at all, but it's just another example, and I think a pretty good example of how good the writing is on this show. So Juliet asked Lucas to hack the drive, and to convince him, she's basically telling him everything that we already know. She's telling him everything about George, about Holston and his wife, all this kind of stuff. She even... I think Lucas picks up on the fact that George was her man and is like now not as interested in her as he was before. But that's another thing. That's an aside. But while she's doing this, I'm just like, wait a minute, hold on. How is Lucas supposed to have any idea? Like, she's saying names and telling, like, and then Holston and then George. And I don't like. Why would Lucas know who these people are? Why is she talking to him like he knows these people? And then she gets done, and George is like, yo, who the fuck is George? And I'm like, thank you. But that's real, right? Like, someone in Juliet's situation with that level of urgency, that much amount of adrenaline in her, the importance of getting Lucas to hack that drive, she's not going to be thinking about what aspects of this story Lucas knows and what he doesn't. She's just going to word vomit. So that's realistic. The problem would have been if he had just been like, you know, responded as if he knew who these people were. That's fine. That's like I said, that's where the problem would have been. But the realistic response of George going, I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Like that was a bit of realism that I can appreciate, because for a minute, I was ready to log that as my first official complaint. Like like it wouldn't have been a huge deal, but I didn't like that. Like the idea that she was just gonna start saying all this stuff, and I'm like, this person you're talking to should have no idea of anything that you're saying. So, like, him being realistic in that moment, being like, yo, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't know. I just thought that was authentic, because here's the thing. Here's the last thing I'm going to say on it. This kind of thing is important because the job of having realistic dialogue or realistic moments is largely a thankless job, right? Because if you're doing it right, no one's going to notice. They're just going to be, like, watching it and be like, okay, like, they're not even going to think this feels real. But if you fuck that up, if you have something that doesn't feel real, it doesn't feel authentic, the audience will notice it, it'll take them out of it. They're like, So it's like one of those jobs where, like, you have to get it right all the time, because if you fuck it up, it's good, like, everyone's gonna notice. So, like, I like the fact that was a moment where it almost kind of felt like they did it on purpose. Like, hey, let's make it look like we fucked this up, and it'd be like, no, we didn't. So, so I don't know. I really like the authenticity of that dialogue in that moment. So there are checkpoints on the silo stairs now. They're all looking for Juliet and the hard drive. Well, not necessarily Juliet specifically, but just someone with a what did he call it? Red level relic. And Bernard helps Juliet through one of the checkpoints, and I'm just like, okay, he's definitely the bad guy. Like, because I'm like, that was just unnecessarily nice. Like, what reason do you have to have her not have her bag checked at the checkpoint? I'm like, he definitely is trying to get her through here. And Juliet tells him that she thinks Sims is the one who's truly in charge, which, as a reminder, is another thing that I figured out early. And when I point this out, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm not trying to get internet points here. It's what I said at the beginning. I'm pointing it out because this show is absolutely fucking awesome, but it did telegraph two pretty big reveals. And like I said at the top, like, revealing whether or not Sims or Bernard is good or bad is not important to me. I'm way more interested. I said I was going to tell you guys what I'm interested in. I'm way more interested in the world building. I said it earlier. World building makes my dick hard. I'm more interested in the world stuff. The creation of the silo. What's outside of it. What's on the hard drive? What happened to Holston and his wife? What's the syndrome? Like, all of that stuff is way more interesting to me than whether or not Sims or Bernard are good guys or bad guys. And while the show did telegraph those reveals, the important stuff is still waiting in the wings. I don't even have an inkling of a clue to what the answers to any of those other questions are. So while I did find the Bernard reveal to be predictable and underwhelming, the important things are still firing on all cylinders. And that's literally my first complaint about the show. So, and we're on episode 8. So that says a lot. I usually have complaints on every episode of every show, but usually minor. Anyway, after Bernard gives away what he knows by mentioning the hard drive, and I don't know how I feel about that style of reveal either, actually. I'll talk about that in a moment. Him and Sims claim to have heard Juliet say that she wants to clean, and they arrest her in the same place that she got rid of the flashback rabbit. Now, what I meant by the style of the reveal, the whole thing of him mentioning the hard drive and then going, it got too meta. Like, oh, I just mentioned the hard drive. How would I know about the hard drive? I must have just given myself away. Like that, I thought it was a little bit too cute, a little bit too weird. Like I couldn't tell if they were going for humor, but it felt like they were going for humor, and that didn't feel appropriate for that scene and that situation. And it felt like another example of, and this is a good thing, of how bad he is at speeches. Like that can become a running funny gag. Like the one he gave at Mayor John's funeral, which I'm almost certain was meant to be funny. But just in that moment, it felt like it was either too meta or it was a little bit too funny, a little too cute. It didn't really work for me. Yeah, I don't know. I think they might have been going for, he's scary because he's unpredictable and weird. And again, Tim Robbins isn't giving me any of what I think they think he's giving me. If that makes sense. Like, I think they want him to portray a certain idea. They think that he's portraying that idea, but it's coming off to me as something different. And that could be a problem with me and not a problem with Tim Robbins, but what are the odds of that, right? But they telegraphed this the whole time by having Bernard be unjustifiably accommodating for Juliet, like I've said. And now I think they think having the character be quirky is scary, but like I said, it's just coming off to me like ill-timed attempts at humor. So the episode ends with Juliet taking advantage of Billings' stress-induced syndrome flare-ups and pushing him, taking the backpack with the drive on it and in it, and jumping over the side of the stairs. And every week the show ends on some sort of cliffhanger. I go, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then we get an Occam's razor-ass explanation at the beginning of the next episode where it's some simple fucking obvious shit. Like, I'm never gonna stop talking about the fucking, the one where she's hanging over the water on that rope. And I'm like, oh my God, how is she gonna get out of this unless she has the upper body strength? They were like, yeah, she just has the upper body strength to climb back up. But my thought is, we should probably like place bets for how simple the explanation is for how Juliet's gonna survive this jump. Like, my guess is that Juliet knew like that area of the stairs was near somewhere that she could land on, like how they just were in the place that they released the rabbit from with all the vegetation and the farming. Like, she probably is somewhere near that and was like, I can jump off of there and I'll land in a bale of hay in the back of a cart. Like, it's gonna be something stupid like that. Like the equivalent of like jumping out of a 2-story window onto a mattress. It's gonna be like, oh, we didn't know that area of the stairs was right next to a ball pit. I feel like that's what it's gonna be, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna close out with one quick thought. I continue to remain curious about Martha. Like, what is her deal? Why can't she leave? And like, I don't know if I missed something or if you guys told me that what it was and I missed it in the comments. I'm sorry. But like, I just don't know if there's like some sort of trauma-based reason, if it's just regular agoraphobia. And I don't want to say regular, like that's some lightweight shit. It's important, it's heavy. But like, it's still a known thing. So is it just like severe agoraphobia, or did something happen? I don't know. I'm curious about Martha. But that's all I got. Let me know how you guys think Juliet's gonna survive this jump. I think like maybe like the level right below that is the swimming pool level. I'm telling you, dog, it's gonna be some fucking basic shit. How she's gonna land. Like, oh, she jumped into the trampoline level. I'm sorry, y'all. I will see you guys next week on time for episode 9. This week, actually, on time for episode 9. And on time again for episode 10. And until then, peace.